Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Media. I'm your host, Max Kellerhalls, and with me today I have
Maya.
And we are going to be talking about the latest in the Star Wars franchise on Disney+. We are going to be talking about
Tales of the Jedi.
For the first half of this episode, we're going to be talking about the 3 episodes dedicated to Ahsoka, and then the later half we're going to have my friend Nick talk about the 3 episodes dedicated to Dooku. So, Maya, let's start off with the first episode of the Ahsoka Arc about her as a baby and her mother.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was probably, out of the whole series, probably one of the weaker of the episodes, just because it was just kind of there. I mean, it's an interesting to kind of know about what a Jedi's life pre them getting kidnapped is like.
I'd die for baby Ahsoka, though.
I like
cute.
seeing...
Oh my gosh.
She is very cute. I also like the idea that not the tattoos, but the markings kind of grow on them.
Right.
But as babies, they're just like circles and birthmarks
But
looking
she was
kind
straight
of thing.
chilling.
I only have like one really cool, interesting fact that I found out about this episode. Ahsoka's mom is played by Janina Gavankar. And the reason why that's cool to me is because in the Star Wars Battlefront 2 video game, she plays the main character. So it's cool to see her play like another character, and a character that's kind of important as Ahsoka's mom. And she's also been in a bunch of other things, like she was in the show called The League. I know she has a bit part in Space Force. But I don't know, I like that actress, I like seeing her and stuff, and I'm glad that she got another role in Star Wars, because I don't know if they're going to do more with the Iden Versio character anytime soon. But yeah, I don't know. There's not much to this episode, it's just about Ahsoka kind of getting captured by like a giant tiger-looking thing. And then her just riding back on it, showing that she has like a force connection with animals. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to see.
It was
like,
nice to see
like
her
I said,
village.
I mean, I didn't have much to say on that first one.
It's nice. The animation's nice.
Oh my god, I love the animation style.
Yeah.
It's...
Especially in that first episode, because it's a different kind of world that we've never seen.
Right.
Very well, it's kind of like Endor-ish, but a little more like Appalachian style. I like the painterly style of this animation.
Yeah,
But I think we're just going to move on. The second episode in the Ahsoka trilogy of these episodes.
Right.
Which was the one dedicated to her training with Anakin. And how throughout the Clone Wars, during the parts that we didn't see in the show, Anakin was doing this really abusive training thing with her. Well, I don't know if it's abusive,
He was really tough on her, but like... She would have croaked, bruh.
Yeah, I mean...
She would have croaked. She'd been, like, gone, bruh.
I know. I like the gimmick of the episode, though, where, like, the more she gets knocked out, the more the time jumps we go into, and we get to see, like, all the different, like, phases in her life, like, from her going from her initial, like, one-handed style to her dual sabers. I don't know, I think one of the elements I really liked about this is showing, like, Anakin and, like... One of the best things about him is that he doesn't give up on the people that he cares about.
Right.
And that he pushes them out really hard.
Yeah. And it ended up saving her life, bro.
It did. It really did. And that's I love the way this episode ends, where it's like, you know, if you watch the finale of Clone Wars, it's ironic that she has to face off, like, her training. Just the idea of, like, okay, yeah, droids are one thing, but people with actual thought are completely other animal that you have to learn how to defend yourself from.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting to think about, because a lot of the Jedi died because they're not used to, like, having to deal with actual people anymore. They're just used to, like, dealing with droids, which are more pinpoint accurate. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to add to this episode?
Not particularly. Not off the top. I mean, I really like the entire episode, but, like, I can't really think of, like, one moment that, like, stood out for me.
I don't know. Again, it goes back to the Anakin thing of, like, him caring about stuff, and, like, with Padme, and, like, he's very protective over her to the point where, like, kind of broke her heart and all that shit. But, like, with Ahsoka, because I've always seen, like, the way he treats, like, Jedi Padawan situations is because of his relationship with Obi-Wan. It's, like, a brotherly sibling aspect, so... I kind of always assume that he sees Ahsoka as like a little sister, and that he doesn't want his little sister to get hurt. So he
Yeah.
He bullies her to make sure that she
Right.
doesn't get bullied by other people. That's
It's kind of
how I
funny
see it.
though how much like sass he picks up from Obi-Wan. Remember when he walked in late and Obi-Wan was like, "You're right on time," and then Ahsoka does the same thing later.
Yeah. I like that part too. So, but it was just nice to hear all these familiar voices again.
Mhm.
There's not much to this episode other than it's just a nice little
Mhm.
poem almost of like each moment in her life and what has
Right.
led up to that fateful moment. And then now we're just going to kind of go into the third episode, which has a little bit more story to it. I thought this was the best of the Ahsoka ones, just because, again, it has more story to it, and like it was neat to see her have her Obi-Wan moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, initially the episode starts off with Padme's funeral,
Yeah.
and they kind of retconned her to being at the funeral,
Yeah.
which was like, oh, that's
A choice.
That's a choice, yeah. That's gonna be like every time I watch the movie now, I'm like, oh, she's in that, she's there. Oh no. I also love her reaction of like, because a lot of them are like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should not be here. This is dangerous. And she's like, she's my friend.
Yeah.
And also knowing that like that's the wife of her master.
Yeah.
Or, like, wife. Yeah, wife. They got married.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's kind of like a friend of the family. It's a bit sad. I
Mhm.
wonder if. I have a question. Do you think she knows about the kids at this point then? I would say no, but like.
I think
When do you think she would have found out?
I'm not sure, but feel like she left that day with the assumption that like Padme had not had the twins yet and had kicked the bucket.
Do you think she knew that she was pregnant?
Mm,
Because she left.
Maybe.
She left.
That's true. That's true.
the
She probably didn't know,
council-
but like she also saw like the funeral.
But she didn't know about a baby bump. There were some episodes of the
Well,
show.
Padme still looks very pregnant at her funeral.
Does she?
Yeah.
All right, I'll have to look that again
Yeah,
because
but-
I always assumed it was just like flat stomach because she
No,
already
she
had
looks
the kids.
very pregnant during the funeral. Anyway.
What is it? Oh yeah. I will say during this whole episode, I like the part with Bale.
Jail?
Give me a minute. I was thinking. Like, I know the name of the person. Like, that's more than enough people can say. Yeah, I liked her conversation with Bale, or I put conversation in quotes because he's talking to two clone troopers
Yeah.
as she's hiding away.
Yeah.
I thought that was really clever and
Mhm.
funny, and I love the clone troopers' reaction of like, that was weird.
Yeah.
Why is he talking like that?
I also like that they had to like move away to that balcony or whatever. Told her like there's nothing you could have done for like either of them, like Anakin or Padme.
Oof.
I think ooh,
Yeah,
hurts a little.
Yeah, I guess he's right. He has to do that with like two people
But it's
in
fun.
this show.
But if you notice, like he knows like what fully he knows. I think more
than what
than what most people know happened. Yeah.
Like, he knows about the kids.
Yeah.
He knows about... He's the only one that really knows about Anakin per
Yeah.
se. Well, I get the assumption that, like, they thought he died, and then
Right.
when Obi-Wan show happens, they're like, oh, no, he lived.
Oh, he's like actually alive.
He's
That's-
alive. That's not good.
So we maybe did a oopsie.
Yeah. She then goes on her, like, nomadic journey of, like, just being a farmer,
Yeah.
or working on a farm, per
Yeah.
se, and, with this one particular family.
Mm-hmm.
And now I do know that this part of the show is based on the Ahsoka book. I don't know who wrote that said book.
My Wi-Fi's not gonna work down here either. So.
However, I do like that they showed it because it is a very
Mhm.
important moment in her journey of like understanding how she got from End of Clone Wars
E.K.
to...
Johnston wrote it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've heard of her. In the book, some of the characters are... I don't know. I always love seeing how these Jedi get revealed because it's always the same fucking way.
Right.
With, in Jedi Fallen Order, it was with the main character helping save his friend from
Yeah.
dying. In this one, it was her having to help save that one girl. I also really hated the brother in this episode.
God.
The brother was an asshole.
Yeah.
He was always being kind of snivelly and like too stuck up, and
Yeah.
he really reminded
He
me...
did, I mean, he deserved to get taken down a notch.
Well, the Inquisitor comes in because he reveals that there's a Jedi on his farm.
Right.
One of the Inquisitors come in. Don't ask me what brother it is. And yeah, the guy's voiced by Clancy Brown, which is cool because it's Mr. Krabs. I love the design of that Inquisitor. I'm not a huge fan of most of the Inquisitor designs, but I really like the cape and the Plague Doctor mask that this guy had. I don't know. I just love the presence of this one Inquisitor.
Right. And then he gets
Oh.
killed off in about 30 seconds.
With no lights, his own lightsaber.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love the idea of, like, this big setup for this character, and just to show how badass Ahsoka is, she just takes him out with, like,
she's just like,
nothing.
You're done.
And she kind of takes him out on how she took out those other Inquisitors, too.
Yeah.
Where she grabbed a hold of the hilt, stopped the blade, and then just took the saber away and then hit him with it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just because...
I do wish there had been a little more, because it was really, like, over in, like, 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm. But it kind of shows how weak the Inquisitors really are.
Yeah.
Pretty much anybody can take out any trained Jedi can take out an Inquisitor. But what makes it scary is, like, because a lot of the Jedi that are still alive are, like, Padawans, a.k.a. people who don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So, like, for characters like Cal Kestis, Kanan, Ezra, all of them, they're just kind of like, these guys are scary. And then when Ahsoka just encounters Inquisitors, she's just like, oh, these guys are nothing.
She's like, peasant.
Yeah. Noob. What Jedi specifically do you want to see get their own little episodes? Like a 3-episode little arc in like a season 2 of the show? Because there's a lot.
There is.
I would like Quinlan Voss.
Yeah.
Because do you know about the cut episodes?
I've seen a little bit, but like not enough to like talk on it. Okay,
so the original cut episodes was it was him and Ventress.
Right.
Which, now that saying that, I would actually like to see Ventress stuff, because she was
Mm-hmm.
always my favorite character, and because the show got canceled, like, they never really did anything with her character, and they just told her story in books and how she ultimately ended up, and I was like,
right. Mm-hmm.
I would like them to kind of do what they did with this, where it shows, like, Ventress's beginnings as a Jedi, and then all the way up to her.
Right.
And I think she dies facing Dooku. I could be wrong, though.
I don't know, man.
Someone in the comments tell me. But Quinlan Voss, too, because he's a really cool Jedi. He has a really cool ability of, like, sensing the ground, and he can, like, see what has been there.
Right.
I don't know, I just like that. I love his design. Mm-hmm. I love his relationship with Ventress.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to see if they possibly talk about some of the stuff they've mentioned in Obi-Wan about him still being out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, according to right now, he's still alive.
Right.
Which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
It has been known that Dave Filoni has been really loose with, like, the book material.
Right.
And adapting that into stuff, because in Bad Batch, he changed the origin of Kanan.
Mm.
Do you know about this?
No, I did not actually.
So, in the books, apparently it's a different scenario about how his events with Order 66 happened.
Mm-hmm.
But for Bad Batch, they incorporated the Bad Batch to be there.
Ah, okay.
So, it's a different scenario.
I see.
And people were upset that he's messing with canon just for the show's sake and using his power over like other creators. I'm not really mad about Dave Filoni, because sometimes you just kind of have to, like, bend canon. Not everybody reads the books. They mostly just watch the actual material that is provided. I just want to see if there's any other Jedi that you possibly want to see.
I don't know. I think one about Mace Windu would be really cool.
That would be cool.
But like off the top of my head, a lot of the ones that I would say I already do. We have a good amount of material on them already, so.
I would kind of like to see a Luminara one, only because it'd be interesting to see her reaction to what happened to her Padawan.
Yeah.
And what happened to her Padawan because of the whole Ahsoka situation.
Right.
Like, I would have loved to see, like, how she dealt with that, like, knowing that her apprentice went to the dark side.
Yeah.
That would have been cool. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick change of special guests. Maya's going to say goodbye, and we're going to move in with our new guest here.
Hi, Nick.
Who is returning after a long hiatus from the first ever episode of $1 Million Media, which you can see on my YouTube channel right now. So it's nice to see you again, dude.
It's great to be back.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about the other half of the Tales of the Jedi shorts, which involve the character of Count Dooku. And in my opinion, these are the better shorts.
Definitely. I feel like these have a lot more depth in character. Mm-hmm. You show the background of a character that we know very little about, like his internal struggle with a lot of the reason why he left the Order in the first place and everything.
They always just explain it in the background. At the very least, like in Attack of the Clones, they said, like, he quit the Order because he is an idealist, but, like, he's not a murderer. He wouldn't do something like this until, like, you find out that, oh no, he is fully Sith Lord. At least in the movies, but just the way this trilogy of shorts shows his mindset on things and ultimate downfall is so really well done. And retroactively makes that character much more interesting when you watch him in both the prequel movies and in the Clone Wars, just knowing why he's there.
Definitely. I know in the Clone Wars we see him more as the Sith Lord. He does some pretty terrible things, like being like a murderer in some senses.
Yeah.
Like he does things for the benefit of the Sith Lord in the war and everything like that.
Let's talk about the first short. In this one, it is Count Dooku and a young Qui-Gon Jinn, who is his Padawan, go to a backwatered planet that's kind of looks like everything's been burned down. And
Yes.
like it's been poached of its natural resources. All the people are sick or like weak. And you basically come to find out that this village of people have kidnapped a senator's son, and the Jedi were sent there to basically save the kid and uphold the wishes of the Senate. And then when they find out, like, yeah, the kid went willingly with them because he found out, like, what's really going on the planet Father's supposed to, quote-unquote, represent. And, yeah, I really like this episode because you get a little bit of that, like, you really see Dooku, like, start to fall down this bad path initially. And there's, like, one quote from Qui-Gon saying, like, I just know when you get like this, I have to, like, step in and save you.
Definitely. You see this this man who wants to keep the peace. He wants to be the Jedi that
he wants to uphold, like, the Jedi ideal.
the original Jedi ideal
yeah.
before like being like part of like the Senate, like because as time goes on, it goes from being like these independent peacekeepers to being like wartime generals, yes, during the Clone Wars, but even before that, they become kind of like a security force for the Senate.
Yeah, or like guns for the Senate.
Yes.
It's also really interesting seeing things from this time period before even the Phantom Menace, because it's still technically High Republic era.
Yes.
Because the High Republic technically ends after Episode 1, I believe, right? That's the idea of when the High Republic ends, because then...
Yes, because there's the
Palpatine-
tensions, and they start separating, or, well, people are thinking about leaving the Senate and the Republic, and when they become the Separatists, that's the end of the High Republic, and it's just the Republic.
And then it becomes, like, I think the Galactic Civil War?
Yes.
One cool detail that I do like is that for young Qui-Gon, they get...
His actual... Liam Neeson's actual son.
I forgot, I think like Samuel Richardson or something like that.
Yep.
And it's really cool. It is a bit interesting to just, like, hear this really young, not Liam Neeson voice come out of a character that's supposed to be Qui-Gon. And I don't know, I wasn't...
But it makes sense, like,
it
why.
makes sense. I don't know, I guess I'm just nitpicking. I wasn't a huge fan of, like, his animation model.
I guess.
But
there was
like,
some...
It's so nitpicky because I felt like the voice was too soft for a character that has those features. Because you're also having to adapt a younger version of a man that looks gruff and tough.
True.
When you do see, like, Qui-Gon later, and it's Liam Neeson, you're like, oh yeah, that voice makes sense.
Definitely. Maybe that also kind of shows how much being a Jedi can wear on someone.
True. Well, Qui-Gon never gave across that idea of, like, he's, like, a weary old Jedi. Like, he's just, like Dooku, he doesn't really believe in, like, a lot of things that the Jedi Order says. Like, he's always kind of questioning their decisions. He doesn't want to be on the Jedi Council. He just wants to, like, do what Jedi are supposed to do, which is go out there and protect people.
Be these vigilantes,
Yeah,
but like
vigilantes, yeah. Or, like,
in the sense of like
gunslingers, samurais.
Yep.
For the people. I don't know. Again, I really like this first episode. It was a really good introduction to what this character, knowing where this character goes, kind of like seeing him as a quote-unquote good guy was really interesting. And seeing those, like, Anakin, like, dark tendencies of, like, going a little bit too far with, like, force choking and, like, straight up just, like, bitching out so many people. It was very fascinating, and I really liked that.
just anything further with the first episode, you see this like this small dip, but he's always pulled back because by Qui-Gon. And
which I like that detail.
It's a good detail because it shows that Qui-Gon was really the voice of reason, the solid ground, the anchor towards the light side.
Yeah. I like this theme in some Star Wars where a lot of the Padawans are kind of the voice of reasons for their masters.
Definitely. Because we even see that as Obi-Wan in Phantom Menace. We see him as this anchor because
Qui-Gon is a bit rash in some of his decisions, like kidnapping this child.
And maybe that just comes with as you go on further down in the ranks of Jedi Council or Jedi Order, you start to see the quote unquote corruption that is they're no longer peacekeepers, they're servers of a Senate.
Yeah, and I like that theme of the next generation is constantly trying to be the better version of themselves, because also that goes into Luke later on in Star Wars with maybe it's not a Padawan thing, but it is the next generation of Anakin's son.
And it's a definite parallel of reality as it is. I mean, we look to the younger generation to be help us. I mean, we say that we have problems with the way the older generation ran things. So, and they look to us and they ask us what do you expect us to do different?
Yeah. How do you want to fix it?
And we have these ideas and we have these kind of middle ground, playing the devil's advocate to their own stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Can we move on to the next episode now?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I think this is my least favorite out of the Dooku ones, just because, in my opinion, and this is just the one gripe I have with this short, I feel like this one is just kind of a repeat of the last episode of Dooku and this time Mace Windu go to a planet, investigate something that's going wrong with a senator, and when they find out what's going wrong, they just do a quick little lightsaber duel, and they take them all out, and then Dooku learns a lesson. Just this time, I like how this one ends and kind of progresses this character going forward.
I like this episode for different reasons from the first. I like them equally, and the only difference is for this one, the dead Jedi in this episode, because I feel like that actually shows a really important thing. It shows that Dooku has very great compassion to his other colleagues in the Order. He treats them as equals, and he have the hopes that if he were in this situation, they would search the ends of the world, try to find out the reason why he died. Because then it shows that we have each other's back. This is a family. This is a group, instead of we're all independent and if one dies, oh well, that's it. That's the servitude of being in the Jedi. It he wants this kind of this family, because I know Jedi are not supposed to have these connections and everything.
He had a father-son connection with Qui-Gon at the very least.
I mean, aren't all Padawans having that connection with their master?
Some. The only case that was when it came to Obi-Wan and Anakin, because that was the first time they had a relationship of brothers.
Yes.
And that's just not what Anakin needed. He needed a father figure. And the only person that eventually became his father figure...
I mean, Qui-Gon, yeah.
Well, Qui-Gon was his original father figure, but when he kind of
right, so then Palpatine.
Palpatine kind of took over and be I'll be your daddy.
Definitely. And, I mean, even with Dooku, his father figure was Yoda. And we see that because, he always talks about Yoda in, this, high sense of, he taught me well and stuff, even though, maybe he didn't agree with everything that Yoda did.
Yeah, I guess I do the way this one ends, I like it because it further shows his disdain for the Senate, but also the Jedi Order, because when he finds out that the Jedi that died, when she died, Windu takes his plate.
Or her seat, yeah.
Takes her seat. And he's just kind of funny how that works out.
Especially since that Dooku thought that he was doing more work. He was doing something greater than what Windu was doing. Windu was following the book, which is, yes, that's good, but you're not in that situation. Dooku realized we're in this situation where we see something wrong with it, and instead of jumping through these hoops of regulations, rules, everything like that, let's act on it now while we still have the chance, because if we don't act on it now, when are we going to be able to actually find out the truth?
and why this happened, because there's always a motive. And the motive of why this Jedi was murdered is because these people were attempting to assassinate their senator, and when the Jedi died instead, they said, well, we are now a threat. Like, we can be taken seriously. We killed a Jedi. So, Senator, we tell you what to say on the Senate. And Dooku is kind of like, I appreciate your, like, ambition.
So, this goes into a little bit of my thesis of what I'm working on.
Plug it.
Yes, sorry. So, Star Wars and its parallel to American politics. And in the sense of the Separatists, they were libertarians in a sense, I feel. Mm-hmm. They wanted this freedom from this, like, kind of government. That
was going down a very fascist way. Even, maybe not at the time of what these episodes are taking place, but a lot of people were kind of noticing, like, I'm not liking where this is going. Like you get that with the first episode and the second episode of, like, these senators are kind of, which is ironically a lot of things that happen today in our real world. Like, these senators are not representing us properly.
No, they're revolting.
Yeah,
and that's good, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Mm-hmm. And what they are doing, they're showing the wrong ways to do it, and like the backlash of that.
Keep in mind, this is like Star Wars is meant for kids, but George Lucas has said that there's been heavy political influences. He even has gone so far as to say, like, one of the major influences of Palpatine, the Emperor, was George Bush.
Yeah.
In this show, perhaps you still get that familiar element, as we mentioned earlier, but you also get that political element, which I feel like Star Wars now has, especially with Andor, which we will do a review just when or the season wraps up, I should say. But what I like about what this show does and what that show does, it's talking about politics in a way that isn't too preachy. Like, it makes sense for the worlds and what they've set up.
It's well flowed.
It's well flowed. It's well written. You kind of changed my mind on this episode because I do like what you're saying, but I think my favorite of this little trilogy of shorts has to be the last one, where it's Dooku going full Sith. Or not full Sith, but like converting.
Yes.
Well, in the beginning,
it takes place exactly during Phantom Menace in like the first half of the episode.
Where in the first, or not even the first half, the first like before the title card comes up, because you see Qui-Gon there, and he's talking about how, oh yeah, I just encountered this, what I think to be a Sith Lord, because what I saw looked like a Sith Lord, and we haven't seen that in a long time.
Well, I mean, like, Qui-Gon knows he saw a Sith Lord, and he understands, like, even if he says that, no one's going to believe him on the council. Because they're like, we did our job.
Dooku kind of does, but you kind of figure out why he knows what it is later.
Even then, but before that, Dooku still had a problem with, he knew that there was some underlying evil. He always has mentioned that, like, that's why he sided with Sifo Dyas in creating the Clone Army.
Before even the Qui-Gon stuff happens, you see him in, like, the library.
Erasing Camino.
Erasing Camino from the databanks, which is a plot point in Attack of the Clones.
I was really actually happy to see that actually took place at the same exact time as Phantom Menace.
I like that too.
That was a real, like...
That's an interesting idea, like, the same time, like, everybody else is, like, worrying about, like, oh, you just got back from Tatooine, is everything alright? And Dooku's over here like, don't mind me, I'm just doing my little thing, and boop, gone.
And the order for the clones happened exactly, like, that's 10 years
cool.
Before the episode.
Well, it makes sense because, like, when you see them, there's a lot of them. Then, title card happens, we cut to after Qui-Gon dies, and they get the information about it, and everybody's going to his funeral on Naboo. One of my favorite scenes in this, there's a lot of them, is just him looking at the tree. This tree that's always in the Jedi Temple, the only tree on Coruscant. And he's just looking at it, and he's just kind of sad because he remembers taking Qui-Gon here, which is pretty much his son. He also knows that his actions have kind of led to that person's death as well.
Yes.
So he's just feeling guilt, and like he's looking at it, and then Yaddle, which I will also say, I like that this show got that nerdy to be like, yeah, we're going to address this little background character that never shows up again.
I thought that was a perfect way to
explain
her disappearance after this, being like the third known entity in the species of Yoda.
Yeah.
I mean,
because like
Grogu, Yoda, and Yaddle, the three.
Yeah, because George has said like he doesn't want people to really go into what Yoda is. He kind of wants to keep the mystery of it alive. Because I feel like once you like name the race, magic kind of loosens.
And I like this idea that pretty much that race, to our knowledge, all of them are force sensitive in a way, shape, or form.
I like that too.
And a little more powerful than others.
You find it funny that they've now confirmed that Yoda's just weird, that he's the way he speaks?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely just Yoda just pulling the wool over everyone's eyes.
Yeah. He's just like, I'm just going to talk like this and fuck around with people. Which is a very Yoda thing. But I like that. I also like who they got to voice.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
That was cool. I like
especially since she's such a fan of Star Wars. Like,
and a fantastic director.
Fantastic director. So going back to the episode, after Dooku and Yaddle have this like kind of this conversation in front of the tree
about like, hey, you okay?
And like how he says he won't even go to
the funeral.
He's
just so guilty.
I like that as like a little detail thing because you don't see him in Phantom Menace.
Dooku then goes to the other side of Coruscant, which is like the shittier side.
The old side.
The old side where it's all industrialized and like no one really lives there.
I like to think of it as if, say, like the Chicago fire happened, but like we never took down those buildings. They just were still there, and we just built right next door.
Yeah. And it's like, we're just going to move over here and do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that too.
Definitely. And I also like the idea of like the underlying dark side is like just right around the corner.
Yeah, that's true. And speaking of the dark side, he goes to these Badlands and meets up with Palpatine.
Yes.
Or Sidious.
Darth Sidious.
Because we're not supposed to technically know it's Palpatine, even though...
I mean, my roommate didn't even know. I just watched Star Wars with him. He didn't even know Palpatine was Darth Sidious. I had to, like, literally spell it out for him.
Okay, maybe it wasn't that obvious for everybody. I don't know. Yeah, he comes up to me. He's like, hey, why'd you kill my Padawan? He's like, hey, why'd you kill my apprentice? He's like, Sidious like, hey, now, I lost one too, so we're even.
Exactly.
And I really like that because he's just like, hey, don't get shitty with me. I lost something too. Even though, like... Sidious doesn't give a shit about Maul.
No, he doesn't.
I just thought that was really funny, and also kind of like a really backhanded like thing to say to someone who's grieving. And then Yaddle kind of like walks around and finds out that Dooku's conspiring with the Sith Lord, and
tries to pull him back.
Yeah, which I love.
They have this duel, and like
I love the part where he's like, "I'm afraid," and he's like, "I understand you're afraid." And he's like, "I'm afraid of what I must do." I'm like. Oh, that's good.
That was the perfect delivery of that line. But like, I like how also Yaddle understood Dooku's pain, the reason why he did what he did.
Especially with the episodes previous, everything building up to that moment of like why he's feeling that way. And she's like, look, I understand what you're going through. If you just explain yourself, you can be free of all charges. If you help me take down this person, we should be fine. And then he's just like... No, I can't go back.
Because he didn't like that. He didn't feel like he could trust that anyone.
And especially when Qui-Gon died, he didn't know Obi-Wan really. So when Qui-Gon died, he was just like, I got nothing left here. Like, I don't trust anybody here. The only person I can really put my somewhat trust into is this guy who kind of has similar ideas to me. But really, I just think, even then, I was like, Palpatine's just using this guy.
Well, I feel like also with that, and this is a little part of my thesis too, Dooku's using Palpatine as much as Palpatine's using Dooku. Mm-hmm. Just Dooku doesn't know Palpatine's using him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think truly that Dooku wanted to be a Sith.
No.
He still wanted to be at least a gray Jedi, if anything.
Like, he did what he did for, like, political reasons, what he think would have bettered the galaxy as a whole.
He needed the power to make his stuff come to reality.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that was to be a Sith.
It's interesting for a character like that to do what he did for political reasons. Because a lot of the time, a lot of these people go to the dark side for, like, emotional reasons. And he did it for, like, I want to better the galaxy. And I thought that's an interesting way of, like, how, even, like, a real-world metaphor of, like, you can do things for both emotional and political reasons, but it still can lead you down a really bad path. I always find it funny that all of Sidious's apprentices always had this small idea of like, oh yeah, we're just going to use this guy and then kill him. Which I think that's really funny that they're all like, that Palpatine kind of fuels this idea like he's a weak old man, and then like when they least expect it, they're like, all right, I'm gonna pull out the last Airbender moves on you, and like, I mean, if you've seen the Darth Maul fight with him, he can move.
He has power.
And the Sith are just manipulative assholes.
That's why there's the rule of 2.
Yeah, overarching pattern of like, it goes master, apprentice kills master, apprentice becomes master, then has to train an apprentice, and then apprentice then kills. So it's this never-ending chain. And then Sidious is just this person like, well, instead of apprentice killing me, I just keep changing the apprentice until I find someone that can best. He's very manipulative, and he just uses people, which he's a villain that I love to hate. I'm like, oh, you manipulative bitch. I love you. I love the little fight with Yaddle, which also kind of then makes me think, oh, that's why Dooku thinks he can take on Yoda later, because he killed Yaddle.
Exactly.
He's like, I can do it again, and then when he's like, oh shit, this is a bit different.
Especially since, to our knowledge, Yaddle and Yoda at least had like pretty much the same level of like power and everything like that. Maybe that's not true. We can never really.
At least he thought the idea of like, I could take on this little thing.
Exactly.
And like, which is kind of an interesting insight. And like, I love like him crushing the door on her, and then her pulling up the door, that last little bit of light trying to reach his soul, and then ultimately just gives up, and he's just like, you may not be able to find peace in life, but I'll give you peace in death. And just like, Jesus Christ, man. That whole episode was just something else. It's my favorite episode of this whole Tales of the Jedi series, ranging from the Ahsoka stuff to the Dooku stuff. I think this was the one where it's like, each of these shorts, as a whole, pretty much show like why the Jedi Order is kind of a messed up thing, or it does not work.
It shows the flaws.
Yeah.
Which is something that we do see.
I mean, you do see it in the prequels, but it really goes into certain specific flaws.
It looks into the special details
like
of
with
stuff.
with the Dooku stuff, it's more of the political reasons. With the Ahsoka stuff, what me and Maya talked about, it's more about like their training and how they're sent out, how they're picked up, and also with their training, they're kind of like in this old mindset of thinking like, oh, we just have to deal with droids. We don't really have to put that much effort into training. And then Anakin's like, no, if you want to live, you gotta like learn how to like fight people. I felt like with the Dooku stuff, there's a lot to like really delve deep into. And that's why I really like it.
There's depth.
I hope in the future there's going to be more Star Wars stuff to talk about. Definitely with Andor. I don't know what's after Andor. I think it might be Ahsoka. Oh no,
Mandalorian season 3, which is I think March. To my knowledge, that's
either March or February. A lot looking forward to with $1 Million Media. And I hope that everybody listening will continue to watch.
I hope you guys have a great time listening to us nerd out for a bit.
Oh, yeah. This is probably the most nerdy I've gotten in a long time about something. Because, like, I feel like we're going to get comments on this. Like, Jesus Christ, you take this way too seriously. But, I mean, like, art, no matter what it is, should kind of be taken seriously to a point.
Exactly.
Like, if the artist takes it seriously, I feel like as a viewer, you should take it seriously.
If you let us talk for another, 10 hours, we'll probably be here all night. But thank you again for having me on the show. I'm glad to come back from the last time we spoke, and I hope to come back again in the future.
You will be able to hear Nick in the future. If you're listening to this on Wave Radio, keep listening to other shows we have on Wave Radio. We just released a new show on Wave called Read the Wave, hosted by my good friend Katie Leyendecker and my other good friend Nora Johnson. I'll enjoy it. If you're listening to this on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to get as many subscribers and viewers as we can. If you're listening to this on my Spotify, again, please share it, subscribe, do whatever you can. And yeah, I hope you all have a good day, and goodbye.